She is a political scientist, a professor. She is a prize-winning author. She is one of the most powerful voices when it comes to change in today's social and political climate. She is Dr. Carol Swain, and I am so thrilled to have her join me on Unmuted with Marsha. Her recent book that is out and has been on the Amazon bestseller list is Black Eye for America. And this is something, if you're following the critical race theory issues, this is a book that you are going to want to read. But I am so thrilled to have Dr. Swain join us today for Unmuted. So, Carol, welcome. We're delighted that you're here with us today.
Thank you, Marsha, and I appreciate all you do.
Well, absolutely. It is an honor. I love being here. You and I met on a plane, and we like to say it was one of those God things.
It was.
As we were coming from DC to Nashville, and we've been friends ever since. And keeping up with one another's lives. And I've enjoyed being on your podcast, Be the People, and sharing so many happy memories and times with you. But your life story is one of inspiration and also a little bit of motivation in there. So give that kind of 1 minute overview so that our audience will know a little bit more about how you came to the political arena.
I was one of 12 children born and raised in rural poverty in southwestern Virginia. I often say that we were the poorest of the poor. We were poorer than other people around us, other Black people. I dropped out of school after completing the 8th grade, married at age 16, and by the time I was 21, I had 3 small children. And I ended up getting a high school equivalency, going to a community college and getting the first of 5 college and university degrees. I graduated from my 4-year college with a bachelor's degree from Roanoke College in Salem, Virginia, magna cum laude, and I had worked 40 hours a week, nights and weekends at the community college library while I was in school. And I never thought I'd become a university professor. People came into my life, they steered me in that direction, and I taught just about 10 years at Princeton and 18 at Vanderbilt before I retired.
I think it is just such a fascinating story. When your children look at your life story, what do they think?
I don't know that it's people that look at it think it's all that extraordinary. It's certainly my children. You know, I'm mom, and but they were part of the journey because they were young when I was in graduate school. I did my graduate education, being an assistant professor at Princeton, working very hard, you know, nights and weekends. And I can remember nights that I worked all night, you know, writing, working on my dissertation. So they always remembered me working. And I remember that once I took my position at Princeton and I had this nice cushy job, my youngest son, you know, he was just astonished, one, that I was still working so hard. And the other thing was that professors are so poorly paid.
I have no doubt. Children always think that, don't they? But it is absolutely fascinating and how wonderful. I know they're mighty proud of you, as we are all very proud of you. Talk a little bit about Black Eye. I think that is an interesting read. And I know there's been a lot of conversation around that book because of CRT and because as you were at Vanderbilt, which is where you were when I met you, you really stepped forward and helped to lead. So talk a little bit about that experience and how that book came to be and how you're using it.
Black Eye for America, How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House was published last summer, and it was written for the American people. It's very short. I mean, it's 100 and some pages, and it's short on purpose because I wanted it to be almost like a primer for people that were trying to understand CRT. I was getting so many people writing me and asking to understand it. So the book, which is co-authored, was written to explain what CRT is, where it came from, how it manifests itself in our society, why it's un-American, it's un-Christian, it runs counter to our Constitution and our civil rights laws. And we have 2 chapters on how to fight back. And we have appendices with resources, all of that in this little book. And we have citations for people that want to see they want to see the work. They want to see the citations for colleagues, but it's written for the American people. And the 10 proposals that we expound on for resisting CRT is to find out what it is, know how it impacts our society and how to combat it. Challenge, this is the most important one, the legality and constitutionality of it in education and in the workplace. We have a right under our civil rights laws and our Constitution to work in an environment that's not hostile and to learn in an environment that's not hostile and to not be discriminated against because of the color of our skin, even if we happen to be white. White people are protected by civil rights laws. Some people don't know that. Organize the grassroots movements that's been done all across the country, build broad coalitions that cut across political party. And Marsha, I know that you all have struggled with the coalitions because Democrats don't necessarily want to talk with Republicans, but when you are dealing with grassroots people in your neighborhood, they have the same concerns. And so those are just some of the things. Educate church leaders. The church is too much into social justice. They've forgotten about the gospel in some places. Pressure corporations the way the left does, because they need to be focusing on profits and not on politics and social justice, and develop alternatives to DEI and some of these things that are being pushed on us that have Marxist roots. Critical race theory is rooted in Marxism.
Yes, you're right about that. And Carol, sometimes what we will hear is people will say, well, all of this now, wokeness is politically correct. And I've appreciated that you've stood up against that. So what is a politically incorrect position that you are really proud that you're able to take?
I think truth today is politically incorrect. I mean, it's the most radical thing you can do is to speak truth, because there's so many pressures trying to bring you down. And critical race theory, is a lie. And it is a worldview that divides people into oppressors and the oppressed, all white people, regardless of whether they're from Appalachia and grew up in poverty and the parents never went beyond the 3rd grade. They're seen as privileged. All minorities are seen as victims, even if they come from, multi-million-dollar families. And it lowers standards and it takes us backwards when it goes to race relations. And it's racist. Critical race theory is racist. And so that's a politically incorrect thing to say, but it's true.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the stance that you have taken so many times in being bold. And I'd love to ask you something else. We're celebrating Black History Month this month. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what that means to you. And if there is a woman of color who has been a positive influence on your life, I think that is something our audience would love to hear.
Something, my position on Black history is that Black history is American history, and it shouldn't be confined to one month of the year. And so, we all go along with it. And the older people like me, we talk about Dr. King, but we are Americans. And so it's our history too, every day of the year. So we shouldn't just focus on one month. And as far as a woman, when I was at the community college, there was this a Black professor named Constance J. Hamler, and she was the one that encouraged me. And through her, I learned I was smart. And I actually, she died of cancer while I was getting my 4-year degree, and I was able to spearhead a scholarship in her honor at the 4-year college, Roanoke College, which was a predominantly white school. And the scholarship is endowed. And I learned before her widower died, that she had always wanted to teach there. And now there's this endowed scholarship, but she is the Black woman who inspired me. And she came from a very middle-class, affluent background. And I have found, as a Black person from poverty, that usually more affluent Blacks are not so interested in people like me. But Constance Hamler was, and she is the Black woman. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I hadn't thought about it. But yeah, she's the woman that got it all started.
I think that we all have people in our life who have encouraged us. And I think it's so important for us to realize that sometimes a well-placed word or just a few words of encouragement to young people will really help send them on their way and cause them to dream those big dreams, or to believe in themselves and to realize that they can do more with their life. So I love hearing that story of Constance and how she just spoke truth to you, and how those words encouraged you to continue with your career, to influence your family, now to influence our community, our state, and our country. One of the things that I hear a good bit about, people will say, I don't understand how CRT became so popular. So what do you say to them when they say, I don't understand how this happened?
It was gradual. I mean, it's been around, critical theory's roots, go back to the 1930s, but at colleges and universities, it's been around since the 1970s. When I was in graduate school, it was there, along with postmodernism, another philosophy that is influencing our culture today. Because with the postmodernists, everything is relative, except now they believe in absolutes. What they say is the absolute truth.
Yeah.
But it has it spread through the universities. It started in the philosophy departments, the political science, humanities, and then it seeped down into the teacher education programs, into the seminaries, and just gradually spread. But it has been affecting our kids in K through 12 now, I would say for at least 2 or 3 decades. What brought it to the forefront was 2 things. One was the pandemic, where parents were able to listen in to what their children were learning, because parents knew that they sent their kids off to schools, many elite schools, and the children were changed, overnight, sent them to college, and by Thanksgiving, they're questioning their faith. This has been taking place for a long time. And so I think that George Floyd's death and all the money that the corporations poured into Black Lives Matter and into DEI and all of those programs, that's when it penetrated the awareness of the American people. So it didn't happen overnight. It took a long time for it to happen. And it was part of the gradual takeover of our institutions that include the family, the church, our colleges and universities, our seminaries, you name it, our governmental agencies. All of these places are affected by critical theory, which is rooted in Marxism and socialism. And right now, it seems like they have the upper hand. The more we get knowledge and understand what we're dealing with, the better able we are to fight back.
Well, you're right about that. And I know that our audience is going to want to keep up with you. They're going to find you on Twitter at Carol M. Swain. And do you have a website?
Yes, I do. And my website is bethepeoplenews.com. Instead of we the people, bethepeoplenews.com. And I also have a nonprofit called Be the People Project, or Be the People Nonprofit. and it's to educate people about conservative values and principles. I'm on Facebook. I'm on just about all the major social media, and I'm very active. And I love America. I love the American people, and I believe God has called me to do what I do.
Well, we are so glad you feel that calling on your life, Carol. And we're going to look forward to keeping up with the great work that you are doing. And to our audience, thank you for joining us today. You can keep up with me at Marsha Blackburn. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you.